Morning. In the previous video, we looked at the difference between text and the specific interpretation of a text. And we said that this text which is perfect and that's what deen is, a deen or knowledge. But any specific interpretation of a text is imperfect and amenable to revision, and that's what we call madhab or an ideology. And the inclusion and exclusion within community is based on text and the clear meaning of the text rather than specific interpretation of the text. And those clear beliefs are only three in its basic formulation: Tawheed, Risala, and Akhirah. So Asma or sanctity only belongs to these beliefs in their ijmal or in their summary fashion, and to the text, not to the interpretation itself. Even though if it is the interpretation you think, obviously this interpretation is based on what you think is correct, and if you have used correct methodology, you are obliged to believe in it, and you have all the right to defend it as long as you believe that that is the correct interpretation. But you can't, based on that, you can't exclude people from the community. And the text itself has different hierarchies, so I'm not going into that. But this basic distinction is very important, as we said last time. It is the basis for Islamic tolerance and Islamic love and Islamic community. And the fundamental epistemological foundation for this distinction between the text and its specific interpretation is in two important facts. The first is we are bound to understand the text based on our understanding. There's no other way. And that understanding includes the understanding of a language, understanding of the context, and the understanding of basic rules of logic and rationality. And not just understanding, and any understanding, unless it is a consensus of the whole ummah or the whole community, any understanding is limited. and amenable to revision. So that's the reason that specific interpretations can't be equated with the text itself, because the understanding through which is our understanding, is always limited, it's always prone to error. And the second thing is, that's your understanding, and then you applied that understanding to a specific text and a specific circumstances. So application, so you can make errors in judgment of a text, you can make, and those errors can be language-based, context-based, and rule-based. And then you can also make errors as far as your application of those that understanding to specific areas of knowledge or specific areas of reality are concerned. So you can make judgment and understanding of a text or an application of that understanding to a specific text and a specific reality. And the third and more important thing is, not more important, but the third and as important a thing is that whatever your understanding of a text is always going to be based on your current knowledge. Not just you personally, but current knowledge of, current stage of knowledge. And that knowledge can be scientific knowledge, that knowledge can be social knowledge, that can be legal knowledge. And that's the human knowledge. So the times you are living in and the level of human knowledge is inevitably going to determine how you understand any text, let alone a sacred text. So the distinction between a text and a specific interpretation or a deen or knowledge, like divine knowledge in there, or divinely sanctioned knowledge, is based. This distinction is based on three crucial facts, and this is madhab and ideology. Al-madhab. By madhab we mean a school of thought. One problem with using these terms is that in the term mazhab is, that's why I've been using ideology with it, is that in Arabic mazhab mean a school of thought, but in Urdu and Persian we use mazhab generally as synonymous with religion. Although in a specific usage, in books, technical usage, we also use mazhab as a school of thought, but more general understanding, that's why I've been. Anyway, so the basic distinction between deen or knowledge and interpretation or ideology and mazhab is based on three things. Limitation of human understanding, be that individual understanding or collective understanding, scholarly understanding or layman understanding. Then limitation is application of general principle to specific events or specific issues. So that's the thing. And third, uh, progressive nature of human knowledge. So human knowledge is all limited, but here we are talking about general human capacities, but here we are actually talking about human knowledge as distinct from divine knowledge. The human knowledge which is not based on revelation, which is based on our senses, our reason, our experience, our history, our interaction, and most of not. So we are bound to understand divine text based on the stage of human knowledge. What do we know about the physical world? So people in 300-400 years ago based their understanding of the Quranic text based on the physics of their day. So if we equated their specific interpretation of the text based on their knowledge of the time, and we thought that that was the divine, we would have made a grave mistake, and we would have, claimed that our specific understanding was the same, and same as the divine understanding. We would have submerged divine understanding or divine text into a specific stage of our human knowledge, which was bound to be, transcended. And that's one of the this sort of thing happened with Christians because they didn't always make this distinction, especially in the late medieval Christian philosophy and theology. They took Aristotelian physics and metaphysics at times, not always, to be and even within Christian there were always opposing views. So even Thomas Aquinas' views were never universal in that sense. So we shouldn't be too undiscriminating in our criticism, but and that happened in Islamic history as well. When people ignored this distinction between a specific interpretation and the text, then two things happen. One is that they subsume text under human knowledge, and even though they are claiming that the text is eternal, they basically claim that their specific interpretation of the text and the state of human knowledge on which that interpretation was based is eternal. So that's making something temporary, something limited, into eternal, and also reducing the eternal into temporal. And also, when this human knowledge is going to be one day transcended, then you would be faced with a dilemma that either you deny the text or deny the advances in human knowledge. So that has happened in human history. In human history, that's why this distinction is very important, not just for the sake of Islamic tolerance and the sake of Islamic love, but also for the sake of truth. Both sort of truth, divine truth and humanly acquired truth. It doesn't matter how you have to be with the truth. And when you are with the truth, it means that you should be open to revision. So if you consider what is going to be revised, what is going to be transcended as eternal, then you would be bound to reject the truth and stuck with your own interpretation. So the only thing which is eternal is the divine truth, but divine truth in itself is never comprehended as eternal by human beings, because we are always going to interpret that divine truth according to our own faculties, unless it is the text is clear, and unless there is a consensus, then that is on very limited proposition, as we saw last time. So I thought this distinction between this distinction between text and a specific interpretation of a text is very important, and one of the reasons why there's sometimes intolerance, even sometimes people exclude Muslims from the community, certain schools of thought from the community, is because we consider our own specific ideological views as divinely sanctioned. They are divinely sanctioned, but only to the extent that they are limited by our own understanding. So even though as long as we consider them true, we can stick to them, and we can even try to persuade others, but we can't exclude people from Islam based on those specific interpretations or mazahib. And the whole point of having schools of thought and ideologies, the whole point is that we don't equate Islam with school of thought. So we are all Muslim, but we belong to different school of thought, because those schools of thoughts are based on a specific interpretation of text which we consider to be true. But we don't claim them to be beyond doubt, because they are based on our own limited human understanding and our own limited human application, and also on a specific stage of human knowledge at which we find ourselves. Okay, we'll take this further in the next video.